Greetings, my friends. It's time for another episode of the Show Me Hoops podcast.
Coach David Heeb. I'm joined by my brother, Coach Toby Heeb. Coach, what's going on tonight?
Man, I feel like I'm a whole new person. I'm up with the world because I'm officially 3 episodes into Game of Thrones. So I'm a part of this universe now.
Yeah,
somewhat.
I'm on the season finale of season 2, and I just
I've got a whole lot of catching up then.
You do, but I had watched that show before and kind of got into it a little bit, and
right.
then whenever you mentioned it the other night, a friend of mine, we've been binge watched a little bit of Game of Thrones this weekend.
Well, I'm finally hopping on. I've seen enough of it over the last few years on Twitter and Facebook. I've got to join that revolution too.
That's right. And so tonight, maybe we could have like a Game of Thrones reference. Every now and then, like have some very cryptic quote like "The night is dark and full of terror," something like that.
Yeah, you might be able to do that because I'm only 3 episodes in. I still only know like 2 people's names because there's so much going on right now.
And the thing is, there's so much going on like throughout the eternity of the show.
Right. There's there's 50 main characters and there's this and this and this and like, man, it's just a lot to keep up with right now. Next episode, I'm taking notes.
I just want to say, Daenerys Stormborn Targaryen, whatever her name is, the blonde-headed dragon chick.
Right.
JWT approved. That's all I'm saying.
JWT approved. Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
And money in the bank, so... So
that's JWT.
So I talked with Coach Matt Baker, girls coach at Fatima High School, and we're going to play that interview for everybody. Coach Baker was nice enough to give me a call this afternoon. We recorded the interview. We talked a little bit off the air before we started to record, and really, really nice guy. He's coming from the same place that a lot of people are coming from when they talk about changing the playoffs, and that is he just happens to be in a part of the state where there's 3 or 4 teams that have a chance to get out of districts, but of course only one can make it out, and then they look around other parts of the state and say, wow, if I was in this other district, maybe we would have made it out, or I respect where he's coming from the standpoint he just wants to make the tournament the best tournament with the best teams in it, and I understand where he's coming from with that. Like we talk about on this show all the time, I've just got a strict competition policy. We've got to compete, and we've got to get away from things that de-escalate competition. Like I'm a competitive junkie, and I just think that anything...
We don't want to water it down anymore.
Yeah, I don't want to water it down. And so I really, really took the time to read what his proposal actually says, first of all. You can tell there's a group of coaches that put a lot of time into this. And then second of all, when I talked to him, I felt like I had a good set of questions to ask him based off of my research. Because like you and I have talked about, and different people that are familiar with our site, they know that we've got the article on there, Fixing the State Tournament. And so I'm always interested, like, hey, if your idea is better than mine, then let's go with your idea instead of mine. And so I read through his proposal, and I think it has some merit. And it's like I told him today on the phone. I think that just logistically, some of what he's talking about is not possible in Missouri. He's from Colorado, by the way. Okay, so he's not from Missouri. It's not possible in Missouri because there's just the geography of the state. Like if you truly seeded the playoffs, let's just say hypothetically in Class 2 that Hayti played Mid-Buchanan in the first round of the playoffs. You're having to cross like 8 hours, 9 hours, like travel.
Right.
Like on
and that's meeting at a neutral site too.
On a Tuesday, something like that. Just not going to happen. I just think that part is going to be tough to sell to administrators. But I do think his idea could be a part of a larger plan, and that would be to plug it in as part of the overall idea that we had for fixing the state tournament. When you get to a certain level of the playoffs, using some kind of RPI, strength of schedule, to set the bracket and say, okay, we're here at the state tournament. Now let's set the bracket so that, it sets up that the best 2 teams might meet in the state finals, something like that. So,
right.
With that being said, I'll roll the interview here with myself and the coach from Fatima High School. This is the head girls coach.
Welcome to another edition of the Show Me Hoops podcast. I'm Coach David Heave, and I'm joined today by Coach. I apologize, but I forgot your name. Could you tell everybody who you are and where you're coaching at right now?
Matt Baker. I'm currently the head girls varsity coach at Fatima High School in West Belly, Missouri, just outside of Jefferson City.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm familiar with your program. I'm at Prairie Home as the superintendent, so I know we play against your at least your junior high girls and different things like that. So I've seen your young kids play, and I know your district is a little unique because you've got the junior high program there that's the public school, and then you have a large private school presence there in your district where you guys have a lot of kids that end up coming towards high school. Is that right?
Yeah, we have a large parochial system around us that, I would say probably half of our kids coming from parochial schools. So a lot of times people joke that we're the only private public school in Missouri, I think.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, so we're talking today, and we kind of traded some messages on Twitter and whatnot, and we've never really met in real life in person. But, we've traded some messages and some ideas, and you're on the basketball coaches committee in the state of Missouri. And before we get into this specific proposal that you're talking about on Twitter that kind of caught my attention, just tell our listeners out there, we've got thousands of people that have listened to this podcast all over the state of Missouri and then from even other parts of the country that may not be as familiar with the way the basketball committee works. I've never served on the basketball committee, but some of my good friends have. So just explain how that works. Like, how do you get nominated to be on it? Then once you're on it, what do you guys do exactly?
Well, I'm actually not on the committee this year. We don't have – kind of how I got into this is we don't have a South Central Missouri rep at the moment for girls basketball. We had a coach that was at Washington High School, and for whatever reason, he didn't end up being able to be on the committee this year, so I just kind of stepped in and ran with this proposal. And it's kind of fortuitous in that I had one of the executive directors of MSHSAA in my classroom for career day this week, and he kind of listened to my thoughts and my ideas and gave me some pointers and directions as far as the proposal went, and it's kind of taken off from there and went viral.
Gotcha, yeah, and that's usually the way these things happen. And so, with that being said, the basketball committee basically, at least from my experience dealing with them, you guys make a proposal. The proposal either sinks or swims. It doesn't mean that it gets voted on, but
okay, I'm going to pause this real quick because I am actually going to I've adjusted the volume here, and I apologize, everybody, but I'm going to skip back in here where I'm going to try to turn that up so that maybe you guys can hear that a little better. And I apologize if you hear a little bit of this twice, but here we go again.
I like them a lot, but I've argued that for years, that MSHSAA likes to tout themselves as a member organization, run by the members. And while that is true, the membership is so large that it's like what you just described. To really, for a true member idea that comes from someone like yourself, just a coach with an idea, hey, why don't we try this? It is so hard to get that ball rolling in the right direction.
Yeah.
And so anyway, here are some questions that I had about your idea. First of all, kind of explain to people just in a nutshell what the idea is before we kind of start talking about it.
Yeah, so currently Missouri works on a regional playoff system. Everybody's familiar with it, the district system. And there's 16 districts in all classes. And If you win your district, you move into the sectional round, which is essentially the Sweet 16 and single elimination starting in your district play. So it's been a multi-year effort based on, on efforts of a bunch of coaches here in Central and South Central Missouri. And what we came up with system, so you keep your 16 districts, and then from there you add 8 more teams based on an RPI formula, which we borrowed from other states like Colorado and Washington. Both use complete RPI-based playoff systems where they seed the entire state based off of an RPI. So we kind of, we didn't recreate the wheel by any means. We just borrowed some stuff from states that have already been in this system, and by doing that, you still have your regional representation that Misha is very big on. You still have your district playoff system, and it essentially turns a district championship into an automatic qualifier, and gives eight teams outside of the say you don't win your district, but you were I think Monroe City maybe this year or Trenton both maybe had 1 or 2 losses and lost in district championship games to very good teams. I think Clark County beat Monroe City, and Trenton lost to Penny, I believe. All 4 very good teams, and all 4 very deserving, and in a lot of people's opinion, I think, to continue to play on. And district system, that kind of eliminates that. And more than anything, if you look at, especially this year, the Class 3 girls RPI numbers, there's usually 2, 3, 4 teams that get in out of that district system that, not that they're bad teams, but there's some other very quality and deserving teams outside of those district champions that, deserve to get a shot at moving on.
Right. So basically that kind of answers my first, couple of questions. You said, first of all, let me back up just a second because you bring up a whole other question I hadn't thought of yet. Where did you play high school basketball or go to school at? Like, did you play ball in high school? Where did you go to school at? And what was your experience like as a player, maybe?
I grew up in northern Colorado and played at a large school, a Class 4 school.
Okay.
And ended up playing college basketball in St. Louis at Maryville University, and ended up staying in Missouri after my playing time was over.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, yeah, that's very interesting. So you've had experience in a whole different playoff system altogether.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you said that that was one of my questions. I'm always interested, like, where did the idea come from in the first place? Like, what was kind of the genesis of it? You said it was a group of coaches. Is this just something you guys were talking about, or just kind of how did this plan start to hatch?
Yeah, we were in the Class 3 District 9 group 2 years ago now, which they called the District of Death. It had Southern Boone, St. James, Father Tolton, Herman. All 4 of those teams were ranked in the top 10. I think they were 1, 3, and 4, and Herman was 9 or 10 at that point. All in the same district, and we were an 18 or a 19-win team as a 5 seed, and I think our 8 seed had 15 wins. So that was a year that we all just looked around and started talking to each other like, guys, this isn't really the way it should be. You're not looking at – there was probably, at the very least, I would say that year St. James and Southern Boone could have made a run at a state, Final Four berth if they weren't in the same district. And I would say even this year we had Herman. Herman was 23-2 or 23-3, and South Cal, who was 27 or 26-0, and we were 20-7 6, I believe, at that point, all in the same district again. So it's kind of been a byproduct of where we've been and the strength of our districts the last couple of years is where it was born.
Sure. Okay. And so is this like, you know, you had sent something out on Twitter and you had attached me and some different coaches and whatever to it. Is what you're putting out there now, is that the final version that you guys are going forward with, or are you still tinkering with the idea?
That's as final as I think as we could make it. Like I said, I sat down with Kevin Garner at MSHSAA and kind of discussed a bunch of ideas, and not to get real specific, Kevin was awesome.
Kevin is a great guy. He's a great guy.
You know, he spent a couple hours, honestly, that he wasn't scheduled to spend with me. He sat and talked and looked at things and kind of pointed me in some directions. And so that's the proposal we're moving forward with, only because I think a lot of us would like to see a full-seeded district or a full-seeded state playoff where, you know, you took the RPI numbers and seeded everybody out, but I don't know that that'll ever happen just because of, you know, like I keep saying, the primary goal of MSHSAA seems to be a geographical representation, and that's probably not going to change. So we went with you know, keeping the districts intact and picking up 8, and you can still keep it regional that way. So,
right.
A long answer to a short question, that would probably be a yes.
Okay. And then you had mentioned, like, your district of death. I'm originally, you know, you're from Colorado, so you may not be as familiar with some of these teams I'm about to mention, but I'm from the southeast part of the state. And down in that part of the state, at the Class 1, 2, and 3 level in boys basketball, historically, you have some powerhouse programs down there that make a run every year. And especially back when it was Missouri changed from 4 classes to 5 classes back in 2003. Back in the old 4-class system, they were really, really, really dominant in Class 1, 2, and 3. There were a lot of years where Southeast Missouri would send teams up and come back with the Class 1, 2, and 3 state champions. They'd all be from like a 20-mile radius from each other. And then to get out of their own district, they might have had to climb over 3 or 4 teams like you're describing. You know, and speaking as a coach I've won 2 state championships coming out of that area. I always felt like if we just can get out of this area, the rest of the state tournament, no offense to anybody else, it was going to be, not that it was going to be easy, but the hard part was over, you know.
Yeah.
Somebody else can always beat you, but the hard part was over. We had to beat the best teams right there in our own backyard. And there's one particular district down there that I know for years we all felt like it was the best district in the state, any class, boys or girls, and that's Class 3, District 1 boys. We called it the Gauntlet. And in that district, I remember one year you had Dexter, who was 25-0, number 1 ranked team in the state. You had Donovan, who actually ended up upsetting Dexter and beating them. Donovan was a great team. You had New Madrid County Central, who ended up winning that tournament and winning the state championship. And then you had Charleston in that district, who they knocked somebody else out who was really good. They've won 11 state titles coming out of that district. So you had 4 teams in this district that was just loaded. And it's, you know, it's like that a lot of years where there's at least 3 just, it's kind of like who's going to come out of that district. They probably got a chance to win the whole thing. So here's my question. How, in your proposal with your RPI, what I just described, like I was a coach at Crothersville one year and I was in that district. We were 21-6. Our only losses were to Kennett, to Sykeston, who was the Class 4 champion. It was 30-0, undefeated. We lost a team out of Memphis who had like 3 Division I kids. It was really good. Like we did not have one soft loss on our whole schedule. We finished the year 21-6. Kennett was that record or better, and then Charleston had that kind of record, ended up getting beat in the state finals in double overtime. So you had 3 of us in the same district that under your format, we might have all made the playoffs. So that's a long build-up for this question. How many teams could come out of a district in your proposal?
Well, I haven't had a chance to do, there's 500 and 30-plus girls teams in all the classes. And in order to do the RPI all the way through, you have to literally build every single schedule and for every single team to get winning percentages and opponents' winning percentages and their opponents, et cetera. But I have done quite a bit of work on the girls' Class 3 because that's where I'm most knowledgeable. And in this format this year, there would have been 3 teams out of Stratford's district. Would have been Stratford, Cleaver, and Fairgrove, who all came out of one district in that southwest region, which makes it a little bit more difficult. The goal of the proposal would be to try to eliminate any district rematches for as long as possible, which basically would put you in could be the Elite Eight if there's only 2 from every district. So, that way, one of the big arguments I get, especially from some of our more seasoned coaches, is like, hey, if I do beat somebody,
that's right.
I'll use Borgia and Sullivan boys for an example. If Sullivan, when they beat Borgia one year, did they want to see Borgia thrown back in the tournament? And obviously, no, you don't. So if, I pull the upset and, say Fairgrove would have beat Stratford this year, do you want to see Stratford put back in and you got to beat them again to get to a Final Four? Well, absolutely not. But my argument to that would be, and especially if you've got a really good program and it's been, you stay strong every year and you just struggle getting over, beating a certain team for those 7, 8, 9, 10 years that you can't get by them, and you still have a team that may be better than, a handful of teams getting in through other districts. In those years, you probably want that shot. So, it's a two-way street, and I understand both sides of the argument, and that's kind of where I stand on it. Is year in and year out, you probably want that opportunity that if you are in a district of death or the gauntlet, do you want that shot to get out? If you can't, if you can't run the gauntlet and spring a couple upsets, and you still got a team that deserves to represent your region. So that's a tough question.
Yeah, and so that was just interesting as I was reading, through it. I couldn't find an answer, because hypothetically, I was thinking in my mind, I know years, everybody thinks in terms of, well, you had 2 good teams knock each other. One had to knock the other one out. Both of them might have been deserving, whatever. But there are years, there may be 3 or 4 in a district, and so I just thought that was interesting to see how many could feasibly come out of a district depending on the records and everything else. I've seen years where under your proposal you could have had 3 easily come out of a district. So you just meant. Go ahead.
I think number-wise, I was actually looking at that this morning. I think number-wise, you'd have to get into your semifinals of your district unless you were 25-0 going into districts. I think looking through everything this morning, I don't think you could lose in that first round of districts and get in. And that might be something that and I'm open. I can't tell you how many phone calls and people have reached out. It's been almost overwhelming, but that might be a something you throw in as an attachment or an amendment to. You got to at least make your district semis, to be in that RPI argument, or maybe you don't. Maybe you have a bad night and you want left out, but definitely something I'd like to hear some thoughts on.
Absolutely, and you just brought up a great point a second ago. One of the other questions that I had kind of going into this was, as I read through your proposal, and for those people that have not read it, you're talking about RPI, which is your formula for RPI is your winning percentage, your own schedule, multiplied by your opponent's winning percentage. So you look at your opponent's schedules, and then multiplied by your opponent's schedule. So all the teams that they've played schedules. So you've got 3 metrics there that you're using to create an RPI formula. And so my thing is, that's number one, to me, just logistically, that's really, really hard to do. And so my question for you is, who does that? Because that seems like almost a full-time job for somebody.
Yeah. Well, personally, it took a gargantuan effort by me and a couple other coaches, and we've literally hand-entered every single team in the state, girls-wise, their records and their schedules into Excel sheets, which is not the most proficient way to do this. However, we don't have the back-end data that Misha has that would make the process a whole lot quicker. And I think there's computer programs out there that would do it automatically, that would be able to calculate it to where you could start having RP. Obviously early in the year, there's really no point to having RPI numbers, but and that's in the proposal. But hey, by January 1st, the computer's going to spit out the first set of RPIs, and every day from there, as games get entered into the, as coaches and ADs, we have to go in and enter our scores after each contest, and it would automatically calculate. And I don't know that it would have to be anything more than that. I don't know that it would require a specific job per se or position. But
so your idea would be for and for those listeners out there that are not aware of this, coaches enter their scores on Mish's website now. Most of the time, to be honest, a lot of coaches may not keep up with that day-to-day, week-to-week. They may go in and put them in there once a month or at the end of the season or, when they're qualifying for the playoffs or whatever. But your proposal would be just that we would have to keep up with that on a more daily basis. Like after the game, you put your score in so that your RPI would be up to date.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And see, I think that's reasonable. And with technology, it's very easily possible. But I'm going to play devil's advocate for just a minute. Let's say that there are 3 coaches in my conference that are just lazy. Maybe one of them knows he's getting fired. He's not entering his scores like he's supposed to. Well, that not only affects my opponent's data, but it affects my opponent's data. Like, how do you correct something like that?
So when I was talking to a rep out of Colorado, what you have is you always have 2 coaches that should be entering the information. So, the odds of having both coaches in a particular contest saying, hey, I'm leaving or I just don't care, it'll probably happen every now and then, but it's not something that would be – a lot of times with having 2 coaches involved, you get 2 shots at getting that information correct.
That's good. That's a good way to look at it. And so here's another thing, and I'm going to shoot one hole in your strength or in your formula, and that is I don't think it takes into account any strength of schedule. And I'll give you an example of the second team that I had that won the state championship. We finished the year 29-4. We lost 4 ball games, and our losses were to Scott City, who was 21 and whatever, Class 3 team. We were Class 1. We lost twice to Scott City, who was a really good Class 3 team. We lost to Caruthersville, who was ranked 5th in the state in 3A. And we lost to Jackson, who finished runner-up to Tyler Hansborough and Poplar Bluff. Jackson, I think, won 25 games as a Class 5 school. But we turned around and beat Jackson, who was a 25-win Class 5 school. We beat Dexter twice, who went to the Final Four in Class 4. We beat, a whole bunch of other schools that were really, really good. Our schedule, we rarely played a Class 1 school unless they were in our conference, like where we were forced to play them. We scheduled up for the entire season. So let's say like Walnut Grove boys this year is a good example. They went into the playoffs, I think, with 11 losses and got to the state finals because they played such a tough schedule. How do you account for something like that with an RPI? How do you take into account scheduling good people? Because I think you should be rewarded for that.
I completely agree with you. And on our sheets that we have at the moment, there's 3 calculations that we've been working on. One is your RPI. One is the strength of schedule, and then we have a third number that is it's an average of your strength of schedule and your RPI. And the scary part is when you average those 2 out, when you look at your your total there and what you have in district play representing you. It almost gives you, at least in Class 3 and Class 2 and girls, when we looked at it this year, it almost predicted your Final Four. So it gets you really close. And the proposal didn't have a strength of schedule because I was told multiple times that that would be. I tried to eliminate as many catches or issues that a lot of coaches would have an issue with. And one of the reasons that I was told the strength of schedule is an issue is because a lot of conferences still go home and away. So,
sure.
How do I, as a coach, say in the North Central Missouri Conference, deal with the strength of schedule if I got to play, 20 of my 26 games are already scheduled for me, so it's not fair. So that's kind of why that was taken out, and I would love to see it in there. It's not hard to put in or calculate at all. Once you have your RPI numbers, you basically take a couple of those calculations and put it together.
And so, as a question, like how would you, if you're say like a Stratford, a Class 3 school who's playing Class 5s, how much weight is there for strength of schedule, like playing bigger schools, or is it playing schools with better records? How do you determine strength of schedule?
It's your opponent's winning percentage. It's a different multiplier is all it is. So RPI, it's your winning percentage plugged in, and then the majority of your strength of schedules is your opponent's winning percentage and their opponent's opponents. What I would like to see, and I've had a lot of coaches push this, and I'm probably not the guy smart enough to calculate this, but a lot of coaches want to see a multiplier go in for playing bigger schools. If you're a Class 1 like you were and you have to go play Jackson twice and you beat them, that should throw your strength of schedule through the roof, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And how we do that, I know we looked at a lot of football calculations where they're, if you're a Class 3, there's no penalty for playing down. But say I go and I play a Class 5, there's a 0.3 multiplier or whatever it is which gets added. But that would definitely be something that a computer program or, like I said, or somebody that's a whole heck of a lot smarter than me would have to program out to where it wouldn't take a couple weeks to work out, but definitely a component I would love to see added.
Absolutely. And so, with that being said, I mean, like I said before we started to record, I mean, I'm always very interested to talk to people with new ideas about the state tournament. I love the state tournament. I grew up going to the state tournament every year. I was a little kid at Scott County Central when I grew up. We won the state championship every year I was in school from first grade to seventh grade. So we won it 7 years in a row. I'm a little kid growing up going to the state tournament. I just love it. But having said that, I can agree that some changes would be a good thing. So with that being said, have you had a chance to look at the proposal that I sent around that kind of went viral? Like you said, yours went viral. Mine went viral also, which was, my idea was a lot simpler, was take the top 2 teams from every district and advance them in the playoffs.
Yep.
Did you get a chance to look at that?
I did, and I wouldn't be opposed to that at all either. I think, I would say 95% of the time you would then get the teams that you needed to get in there playing and moving on. And I think that's, to me, that's the goal. And I've got a lot, like I said, I've got a lot of response, and I've got a lot of, probably tenfold good to bad, but I've probably had 10 or 15 coaches that I would say are the hardcore. You got to beat the best to be the best, and stop complaining and win. And it's not that I don't agree with them. I just, I don't think that you're getting. And when I say, I don't think we're getting our best foot forward. I don't think it's a true state championship, and to me that's not right. And I think the best teams should have to play the best teams to win it all. And you're murdering yourself getting out of a district and dropping 3 out that could probably go win districts anywhere else in the state. I don't think it's softening the tournament at all. If anything, I think it makes the tournament harder.
Sure. I think with your plan, let me put on my superintendent hat for just a minute and stop being a coach. I think the problem with your plan, as far as the reason people won't vote for it, I think is logistically, it's really tough to ask schools to say, okay, like right now, basically, like you said, your district is regional. And to a certain degree, your sectional is also regional. A lot of schools don't have a really far travel time for that sectional game. What you're proposing could have kids out on a long trip. Like I looked at your sample bracket, and some of your games would be a really, really, really far drive. I mean, 2-3 hours or plus for some kids, like on a Tuesday night. That's probably going to be a deal breaker for some administrators. And then to say, okay, now you have to do it again before you even get to a quarterfinal. Like some schools may have to, because the way your bracket's set up, there's 24 teams now instead of 16. So for some teams, they're going to have to play 3 times to go to the state tournament, which I'm fine with, because the state tournament in Missouri used to be that way. But the difference is you're talking about potentially 3 really far drives for a school before even getting to a Final Four. And it's not so much the far drive, but it's the fact that it's on a school night. And I just think that's going to be tough for a lot of people to swallow.
Yeah, and I it's hard to refute that, and not that I even would. I think when you go, it's hard when you're stuck in that regional idea. And I know, if you look at like that proposed bracket in the proposal, we would have snuck in and had to go into the Northeast region. So you're going to have your 16 teams that normally are in, and they're regionally set. And like you said, those 16 are not going to have that much travel. Where you get that travel is when you get into that 8 at-large selection. So, you made it in, and in order for you to fitting those 8 teams into a region gets tough, especially with central teams like you had us and Stillville and League State Central Park Hills. Like they're a little bit easier to push to the Southeast region, but like Herman and us, you can send us Northeast. You can send us Southeast. Really, you can send us Southwest. So
yeah, I can relate because as a superintendent, I have to travel to a regional meeting. And you would think, I live in Columbia, Missouri. You would think that from Columbia, I'm in the middle of the state, I would have a relatively short commute because I'm right in the middle. But
right.
the regions are split like you're talking about, Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest. So I have to drive about an hour and 45 minutes to get to my meeting that I go to once a month because it's like you're talking about. When you look at Missouri, and this is really, it's not a basketball issue, it's a geography issue. Missouri is a big state from corner to corner. Like if you go from the northwest corner to the Boot Hill southeast corner, I mean, you're talking about an 8 or 8.5 hour drive. And so when you got teams in the middle like you are, trying to farm them out and where do we put them in the bracket, that's where you're going to get into some logistical problems there. So basically, to kind of put a bow on this and wrap it up here, basically, I think your idea. I'm big on saying this all the time to my staff and my people. I'm for the best idea in the room. It doesn't have to be my idea. That's why I appreciate you taking a chance to talk with me and let everybody kind of hear your idea because if there's a better way of doing the state tournament, let's try it. I actually think that your idea has some merit as part of a bigger idea. And I'll tell you how I would use your idea would be if you took the proposal that I threw out there, let's take the top 2 from every district, just because I don't know if you can get around the geography of the state of Missouri, how big it is. It's just there's going to be some logistics with trying to have a truly seeded state tournament, like hypothetically, what if the 1 seed was in Cape Girardeau and the 16th seed was in Kansas City? Like, you just can't do that. And so, but what if you took the idea that I had, which was, let's take the top 2 from every district. We play the district championship game, and then those 2 teams enter the state tournament together, one of them as a 1 and one of them as a 2. They cross bracket and play, so when you go to sectionals now, the 1 from District 1 would play the 2 from District 2, and vice versa. The 2 from District 1 would play the 1 from District 2. So you just cross bracket and play, and the 2 winners both advance to a quarterfinal. They don't play again. You play that 1 game at your sectional like you do now, and you advance to a quarterfinal. The same thing's happening with District 3 and 4. You're going to have 2 teams emerge. So hypothetically, you could have the first and second place teams from District 1 and the first and second place teams from District 3 could have both advanced and knocked District 2 and 4 completely out of the tournament. Like you're saying, where maybe you had that was a district where nobody in District 2 had a winning record at all. And District 1 had 3 teams with 20 wins. So one of those teams is going to be the odd man out. But at least 2 of those teams do get a chance to keep moving on. And then when you get to your quarterfinal, you cross bracket and you play each other. And I'll use your school, for example. Let's say that Fatima and Herman both advanced all the way to the quarterfinal, and you both beat whoever was at the quarterfinal. Now you're in the Elite 8, which would be, we're going to go to the state tournament and take the Elite 8 to the state tournament instead of just taking the Final 4 to the state tournament. And then I would use your RPI system to figure out the bracket at the state tournament, because I think once you have those 8 teams, the best 8 remaining in the state, it's not going to be 100% the top 8 in the state, but it's going to be a lot closer than what it was. Then use your RPI system to try to set a bracket at the state tournament to where if everything played out the way it was supposed to, you'd have the best 2 teams that met in the state championship game. And if there was an upset before that, of course, we all like watching upsets in the state tournament. And so I think your idea has a lot of merit. I think geographically and logistically there are some issues to kind of get over there. But I do think it could be part of a larger idea that has a lot of merit.
Well, I definitely appreciate that. And like I said, anything or any type of proposal that would take off here and go, I would jump behind 100%. And I think based on, in basically 48 hours, had over 10,000 clicks and interactions with the proposal on Twitter. And I really believe that there's the majority of the coaches out there that want to see something change. And, I think this is the way to get it going and spreading ideas and information. And any way I can help with that, I will. So.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, I really appreciate you taking a second to do this, and best of luck as your idea moves forward, and maybe we can get a chance to do this again sometime.
Absolutely, sir. Thanks for taking the time to bring me on, and enjoy your show and your website.
Okay. Thank you so much, Coach.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
And we certainly appreciate Coach taking a second there to talk about that with us. And Toby, I'll let you kind of jump in because I was part of the conversation. You just heard it for the first time, so go ahead.
Yeah, well, first, like you said, thanks to Coach Matt Baker for coming on and talking about it and sharing his idea and just for having the idea. Want to improve the game here in our state and try to make it better in any way. And, I actually stumbled across this Friday, and we talked about it. I saw it on Twitter. If anybody wants to see his actual proposal, go to his Twitter at Coach_Matt Baker, and you can read that, his actual proposal. First of all, a few things I like about it, or that I like overall, is that he put the effort and some time and energy into improving something, the thought behind it, because it wasn't just I think this would be better. Like, you asked him some tough questions, and he's like, well, this is how we would do that. This is how he had reasons and answers for pretty much everything that you threw at him, which I thought he's really, really thought about this and
Absolutely.
put a lot of energy into it.
I agree 100%.
And some of the stuff about, like, how are you going to figure up RPI? How are you going to do strength schedule? All this, like, I mean, he didn't just say, oh, we're going to do it this way and leave it at that. He said, here's how we're going to do it. Okay, but how can we do that? So I thought, this was not some half-hearted thing. Like, he's really worked on it. And I also just appreciate, like I said, that, that he wants to change and make things a little different to improve, not just for the sake of changing or making them different and going with his idea. He just wants to make things better. And on that token, I'm going to say something. One of y'all said it during that interview about, or maybe y'all didn't. I just took it this way, and you hear people say it all the time that the state tournament format needs to be changed, and it should be this, it should be that. Especially just coming off of the state tournaments, we're just a couple of weeks removed from all that. I've always thought it's been a great experience, and we had a great time this year and good games. I don't think it needs change, but I do think it can be better. I think what we have is a good product, but that don't mean it's, the best it can be. And to that, like what I don't like about his proposal is it seems like there's a lot of holes, I guess, would be the best way to describe it, with the RPI and the strength of schedule. I don't like that for high school sports at all. We're starting to talk about, how they pick college football playoffs and stuff now, and I think we're going way too in depth.
Well, and I'll be devil's advocate and kind of say, and that's kind of what I was saying with strength of schedule. Like, like I'll give an example. When Otto Porter Jr. was a senior in high school, their only loss all season was to Chicago Simeon, who had Jabari Parker.
Yep.
And
one of the best teams in the country.
One of the best teams in the country. They might have lost another game like in a Riverbend to somebody from they lost to Dallas Lincoln, who had like 8 Division I players.
Right.
Where Chris Bosch went to high school, one of the number 1 teams in the country.
Right.
So they got 2 teams out of state, nationally ranked, with NBA players on their roster. That's their only 2 losses. Now let's say, like there was a team like North Andrew this year that's undefeated.
Yeah.
Or a team like Eminence who only has 1 loss. Is their RPI going to be better because they played because they're undefeated? Like, and I just don't like that there's not a strength of schedule. But to his point, that's not his idea for that. Like, I understand what he's saying. There are some coaches out there saying, well, we're kind of restricted by the fact that our schedule, some conferences play a home and away game. So if you're in an 8-team conference or a 10-team conference, and there's your whole schedule right there.
Well, and then the one thing that kept coming up about what would make this so hard to do is the logistics and the geography. Not just overall in the state of making teams play each other for a big-time state tournament, but just some teams playing games struggle with geography in the state because things are so rural in the state, so spread out where, like you're saying, teams got to play at home and away because if not, they're traveling so far just to get a game in with a different team, period.
Sure, and so I went through his schedule, and I'm not putting Coach Baker on the spot because they did have a good team this year. I'm familiar with his program. But here were his losses. They went 18-7 in the regular season. Their first loss was to Licking. Licking was like 27-2, got to the quarterfinal. Mm-hmm. They lost by 1 to St. James. St. James, another team with a bunch of wins, good season. They lost by a handful here to Boonville. Boonville got to the district championship and lost to California, who made it to the state championship. Boonville was top 5 or 10 in the state in Class 3. They lost to Helias, another powerhouse program. They lost to California, who was in the state finals. They lost by 2 to Blair Oaks, who's also in that district, another 18 or 21 team. And they lost twice to South Callaway, who was 26-0. So I can understand what Coach is saying. If you look up and down their schedule, they've got a lot of good wins on their schedule. If you look at that district in particular, they had 4 teams in the district that were all, very, very, South Callaway was really good. They were 26-0 heading into the playoffs. They had Herman, who is another team in that district. They were 23-4 when they got to the district finals and lost to South Callaway. You had Blair Oaks, who was 21-5. You had Fatima, that was 19-7. So I get where those coaches are coming from. You got 4 good teams. Only one of you can come out. I think what hurts their argument is then South Callaway gets in the first round of the playoffs and gets beat. So it's like, okay, you're
that doesn't make the rest of you look good.
Yeah, your champion is, okay, well, if
you look really good if that person went to the Final Four.
Yeah, if that team went to the Final Four and lost, a good game to Stratford, you'd say, wow, there's 4 of us that could have won it. But that didn't happen. And so I would say this, and I'm not accusing Coach Baker in this district of this because I'm familiar with these teams. These are all good teams. But, there are some parts of the state. We had another, like North Andrew, for example. They're undefeated all through the season, get to the Final Four and get beat. That happens a lot to teams that come out of that part of the state in Class 1 and Class 2 boys. It just depends on the geography of where you're at. Like, no offense to Purdy. With Purdy, when they were coming out of that district, I didn't before I even saw them play, when I just knew the conference they're in, and I'm not trying to offend anybody out there, but that's a Class 1 and Class 2 conference. You don't really get a lot of Class 3 games even when you're playing out there. So let's say that it's just your year.
It's not necessarily their fault either.
It's not their fault at all, but I'm just saying if it's your year and you get on a roll, like it was just your group of kids that were good all the way through school, and it's your year, you're going to put up a really good record and have a chance to do something. And compare that to a school like a Hayti who's playing Crothersville, New Madrid, Kennett, like just a different part, like the schools in St. Louis. Like if you're a Class 2, Class 3 in that part of the state, the competition that you have to play. I know I was talking with the coach from Confluence Prep Academy here a couple weeks ago. They have kind of the same argument, like, man, the teams in our district, there are more of us. It's brutal, exactly. And I think that every part of the state feels that way. So my point would be, just again, being devil's advocate, we all feel like there's 3 or 4 of us that if we got put in different districts, we'd all make it out. But that's not true because every part of the state feels that way. Every part of the state. And the geography of Missouri is such a big state that it's always going to be a regional tournament. But to kind of bring this back in, Coach Baker, his idea is still a good idea. Mm-hmm. And I think that, again, but his idea is part of a bigger idea. And and the simplest way to do it would be to take the top 2 teams out of every district. Like if we really want to change the state tournament, not that I don't think it necessarily needs changed, but I do believe there are years where the best 2 teams in the state are in the same district, or the 2 of the top 3 or 4 teams in the state. I'm not talking about this was our year. If we got our good group and maybe we could have made the playoffs. I'm talking about Porterville and Bernie back in 1993, when you had Porterville was 33-0, won the state championship, and Bernie was 28-2. Their only 2 losses were both 2 or 4 point losses to Porterville. So Porterville is undefeated, crushes everybody. The only team that gave them a game is Bernie, and that's their only 2 losses. Bernie's only 2 losses of the season.
Right. That's a legitimate argument right there.
So in that district, you literally had the best 2 teams in the state. I'll give you another one that you're familiar with, Bell City and Scott County Central.
I've got a devil's advocate for that one, but go ahead.
Where we were on, we're in different districts, but we're going to meet in the playoffs. And
sectionals every year.
In sectionals every year. And the winner of that game went to the Final Four 10 out of 11 years. Whereas the only times that the winner of that game didn't go to the championship is the times that my freshman and senior year, where the winner of that game played the eventual champion, Jefferson. But the problem with that is, we both felt that way, and everybody probably agreed that we may have been the best 2 teams in the state, but we never won. Jefferson won it all 4 years. They did.
So, that kind of kills the argument.
No, I'm not saying, but I'm saying you definitely were 2 of the best 3 or 4 teams in the state.
Guaranteed.
So, but the point being, if you cross bracket and take the best 2, and you take the best 2 to each round until we get to the Elite 8 at state, then you guys would have both been there for sure. And then
Right.
you've got, there's countless other examples through the years with the famous one being when New Madrid won the district and Brett Hale was a junior and senior, and Brett Hale's group was probably the second or third best team in the state.
Right.
And just happened to be in the district with Derek Tipler, Ronald Ranslin, Ricky Smith, and all those great New Madrid teams.
Yeah,
and
some
so
of the all-time teams.
There's just phenomenal teams. And so I'm
Bad
sure
luck.
there's a lot of teams in Class 3 District 1 through the years. I know I was in that district a couple of years that felt like, man, if we just weren't in the district with Charleston, we could have a chance to get out. Like he said, the old coaches say, well, get better and beat them. And I'm one of those coaches.
And one thing that I'm going to say about that is, if you're good enough to win the entire thing,
right,
then you should be good enough to win your district.
That's right.
And one reason that, I like the, take two teams or this or that, you're going to have an off night. So, or you're going to just run into the best team early, but maybe you can see them again, like with your format, in the state championship game, and it might be your fifth time playing them this year. You finally got the recipe to beat them. But on the same token, like you've always said, during the state tournament, you're going to have a bad game. You're going to have an off night.
Yep.
To win the whole thing, you're going to have to win on, like, your C game, your C-minus game, or something like that. You're going to have to win on an off night. So, I mean, like I said, I love the idea of change, but at the same time, it's like, any way we change it, even with your way, it's going to water it down a little bit.
I think with my way, I disagree with you. I don't think it would water it down. I think what it would do is if, like, the team from the next district over is truly better than us, like, it will give one extra round of a chance for people. So on the years where the two best teams are in the same district, then what it would do is it would make that next round even better, because now we're bringing more great teams one round further in the playoffs. But
we're better. We're getting closer to bringing the best of the best.
Exactly. And so, and again, I think his idea, when I first heard about it, I just honestly, I shook my head. I'm like, man, what is this?
Well, I
crap?
quit reading a page and a half when you started talking about RPI.
Yeah, I just
not gonna lie.
I was like, RPI, because again, I think if you're just
and one thing I want to say about that, and see what you think, is that the RPI, he was talking about the way they'll figure it is, your schedule, your opponent's schedule, and like their opponent's schedule or whatever.
Your opponent's schedule, yeah.
Your opponent's, yeah. So, like, what if, like, we'll go back to Hayti, who made the state championship this year. They play in the Boot Hill Conference, which is some good opponents.
Absolutely.
And their opponents play good opponents. And some of their other out-of-conference opponents are like SEMO conference schools, who obviously play good opponents. But what about, like, something crazy this year where the teams that Hayti played in the SEMO conference were a little down, like a Kennett, a New Madrid, a little down this year, but the teams that Kennett and New Madrid played, Charleston, Sykeston, Cape, Jackson, Notre Dame, they were not down. Mm-hmm. So by playing a down team who plays good teams, your RPI goes up.
Yeah, and I think that
again, and then the same thing happens with strength of schedule. Like, I could just look at it. It probably favors small schools better because they can just play big schools, especially in southeast Missouri where, that line there around the Cape area, if I'm a small school, I'm just going to say I'm going to schedule all these bigger guys for my out-of-conference games if they'll play me. Even though I'm not good enough to beat them, but by playing a bigger school who may be winning, it's going to help my strength of schedule. I can go into, our RPI strength of schedule meeting 8 and 18 with a big.
When you make the state tournament a math problem,
that's my thing right there.
I just think that you're going to have years like I was saying in the beginning of this, where, like, if you had polled every coach in the state before Dom Johnson's senior year, hey, who's the number one seed at the start of the state tournament? Unanimous, Bell City. But based on RPI, because we had 4 losses against really, really, Class 4, Class 5 type teams that were good teams, not just that they were bigger schools. I mean, you're talking about bigger schools that won 25 games.
Exactly.
And, now we're going to be the 4th seed or whatever because we played a good schedule.
Because you played good schedule.
I just don't think that, but like I was saying, when I first read this, I shook my head because I just don't think that you can make that work. But when I actually read what he wrote, I had a really – that's when I want to pick the phone up and call him because I said, because there's a lot of thought that went into this, and there are a lot of good ideas that I don't think this is a finished product, but I do think that there are a lot of good ideas because when I first shook my head, when I looked at what he said, I said, well, if you really stop and look at what he's saying the same thing that I'm saying, which is, there are years that you're going to have two great teams in one district.
Yeah. I don't think there's ever three.
We're saying the same. Well, I just don't think – I think if you're going to take three out of one district, I mean, I would have to see –
Well, I got something for that here in a minute.
I would have to see the
lead
year
us into something else.
That would – yeah, I just can't see where you would have three coming out of one district. That would have to be – like UConn, Notre Dame, and somebody else coming out of one district for me. I mean, just
the SEC is not laying in any of our districts.
I can't see that. But yeah, that's I really appreciate him taking the time to do that. I think they're onto something. But I want to make a broader point too about just the way that rules changes come about. And if you listen to what he said, I mean, the coaches committee is a 16-member committee. And right now they've got a vacancy, so he gets on there. And no offense to Coach, he sounds like he was a good player. He came here on a scholarship and everything. But somebody that's not from our state, he comes on there, hey, I've got an idea, and you've got a vacancy. So I guess my broader point is, when we're talking about changing rules and moving things forward in the state, I think it's important that we have different voices for sure. But on the other hand, I want Brad Botch on that committee. I want, I want somebody.
Which he is.
Yeah, exactly. And I want guys on that committee who, that have been coaching for a long time, that know, kind
of
the ins and outs as far as, usually you make a rule change in response to something. And I think just like when you change a law, like right now, not to get on politics or anything, but with all the gun law stuff going around and around, I think anytime you make a knee-jerk rule change, it's probably going to end up bad. It's going to be a bad
It's going to be good for a year or two, and then
because you're making it for this one situation.
Right.
Instead of, like whereas a guy who's been coaching for a really long time that
seen it all,
maybe seen everything go around and say, well, yeah, you guys got 4 good teams in your district right now, but I can remember a year when nobody in your district was 500, something like that,
Right. Yeah,
so,
not going to happen every year.
But
I want to say 2 more things about his proposal in the state tournament in general. And the first, and maybe this has been talked about before, and maybe it was done, I don't know. I've never heard it, but just sitting there listening, if we're going to change things with the state tournament, and I think this could be realistic in a lot of years, like I said, my freshman, senior year, Bell City and Scott Central, the only 2 years during that run that they didn't make the championship game was the year that they played in the Final Four and played the champion the first round. Why not get to the Final Four and just seed it right there?
Which is what
1 through 4.
I think his idea.
Let's just do that.
And my idea for that would be when you get there, then use some kind of a formula like he's talking about, where it's 1/3 RPI, 1/3 strength of schedule, 1/3 coaches seeding. Something like that where there's, because I think if you just let coaches seed it, I don't care what you say, we're human beings, and we're going to say, man, I don't want to play them in the first round. There's going to be some funny business going on. But think
there's just 4 teams. There can't be too much funny business.
All it takes, what?
You can't manipulate it too much.
It's like you just said, playing them in the first round up there or playing them in the championship up there, it's a difference in at least getting to the state finals or not. And so, all it takes is, me seeding you one spot different, so I think I think that's where you use his RPI. You use his, and with my proposal, it was take the Elite 8 to state. But even if we just did the Final Four.
But then at that point, like if we're just going to use RPI for that, now we got to figure it all up that weekend or something. Because, I mean, I don't know. Unless you're going to do it all year, which the only thing, like y'all talking about the computer program, and we're not huge fans of Max Preps, at least I'm not. They do that they have the strength of schedule for every team on there.
Well, what he's talking
based
about
on what y'all are talking about
is everybody's
not
schedule's
every
on
team
mission.
put their stuff in.
Everybody's schedule's on mission anyway.
Right.
And so, like he's talking about, if I'm playing you, and say you always forget to put your scores in. Well, if we play each other, and I'm going to put the score in, well, it would go on both of our pages.
It goes on mine, yeah.
Exactly. And so that way, like you've at least got two people, but I do think that's a problem is when the formula is 3 steps out. It's my schedule, my opponent's strength of schedule, my opponent's opponent.
That's the one I don't like is my opponent's opponents.
You're talking about everybody having to remember to do this because if you're missing a game or two in there, it could throw off the map. So yeah.
Well, what they would do to fix that, which it would only work, it would miss a game or two, is move the date up to have your game submitted by.
Sure. Yeah, that part I think you could get worked out.
It's easily fixable. It's just I just don't, like I said, on a year where, you're going to play a few teams who play good schedules, and on those good schedules are teams who also play good schedules. But the teams that you're playing of that bunch are not the better of them. I think it kind of inflates what you're doing. And with anything with the computer and stuff, there's going to be ways to
if you're playing
do whatever.
If you're playing in a part of the state, and I know this sounds backwards, but if you're playing in a part of the state that's kind of weak, where, you got 4 or 5 teams with really good records, and you know what I mean? Like, you can have a really good record, and you're really not playing anybody. And, so I beat you, and then, you just look around the playoff bracket. How do these teams go 28-0, 26-0, go, do all this and then get in the playoffs and not just get beat? Get beat.
Yep, double digits.
And, because you weren't playing anybody all year. Or you just had the worst game of your life
like we always say,
the wrong
when
time.
you're looking at these rankings, I saw something today in baseball rankings, and you hear it all the time during high school basketball rankings about, somebody put the high school baseball rankings on Facebook, and a parent of that school said, "How is this team and this team ahead of us when they got worse records, and a couple of the schools hadn't even won a game yet? They were 0-2." And that's kind of what we're talking about. Is some of it's opinion, and some of it's just who you play. And if you're not playing anybody, teams that are playing, people may be getting punished in a way.
And here's the wild card to all of this that we haven't talked about that you've got to mention. I'm going to bring up a historical team here. The 2000, this would have been the 2000, New Madrid County Central Eagles, I forgot a 0, with Derek Tipler, all those guys, they were sophomores. They started the season out 0-8. Why did they start the season out 0-8? Because they were also a dominant football team. Dominant. So, like in basketball, how do you get punished for being good? This is a unique sport, especially on the boys' side.
Oh yeah.
How are you gonna punish people for starting out slow because they were really, really good in football, and maybe
that's a great
some of your tough teams. And so that's why I like my proposal better, because for whatever you want to say about it, it gets settled on the court. You know, you have to beat somebody, and so it's like we're not voting you in. You got in because you got to your district final and you got first or second place. And then if you got second place and you get to the next round and somebody knocks you out, you're just out.
You're just not good enough, yeah.
Yeah, you're just not good enough. You got 2 chances. But you had a chance.
Well, and like I think, like I said earlier, I think it's cool. It's neat just to think about changing. I don't think it needs change. But I do think it can be better. There's always room for improvement in anything, and this is one of those things.
I like my idea because if you get to the sectional,
because it's your idea.
I like it because I like it because when you get to the sectional, there's 2 boys games and 2 girls games, and then when you get to the quarterfinal, there's 2 boys games and 2 girls games. I like it because you're doubling the amount of games that are going to be in the playoffs. You're doubling the amount of teams that are going to be in the playoffs. And you're right. You are creating that chance where, okay, for somebody, you got a second chance because you got beat in your district finals.
I like that. I don't hate it.
To be honest, I'm a little conflicted because of what he said. If you pulled off that upset, would you want to have to play him again? I get that point, and I'm conflicted about that. But I think that having it settled on the court, and again, that's why you play the regular season. That's why you hope that you're not on the same side of the bracket as the 1 seed if they're really good,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I mean, all those things matter. And then when you get into the playoffs, but I do think his idea is a good idea. It's a different way to look at the problem. Not that there's a problem. That's the wrong way to say it. It's a different way to look at this issue of what do you do when you have Bernie and Portageville in the same district like we described.
Yep.
So it's a different way to look at the issue, and I do think his idea has a lot of merit as part of a bigger idea. And
I think one thing we need to go to, if we're going to start talking and finding ways to change this and get the best 2 teams in the state championship, which I think that's the most obvious reason anybody wants to change the state tournament format, is so we can see the best 2 teams in it, is we need to quit using that argument that it's not always the best 2 teams or the best 4 teams, because that's just sports right there, and that's something we got to deal with. I mean, that's the whole point of competing. You can look at the Final Four in college basketball every year, and you're probably not thinking that was the best 4 teams all season.
Exactly.
And that's sports. I mean, you can't tell me Loyola Chicago was one of the top 4 teams in the country this year.
That's exactly right. So,
and that's just the whole exactly.
That's it.
That's the whole beauty of it, and the everything about it. And to me, when we start talking about all these other ways to get this team in, how can we make room for this team, and these teams got to face each other too early, it's not fair. And it to me, it starts to sound like something going on right now, and it's all these round robin AAU tournaments where you lose your first game, well, now you're in the silver pool, and then you go in the bronze pool. And well, if we're taking 3 teams from every district, let's just give them all a gold and silver and bronze bracket and turn it into an AAU round robin tournament.
Yeah, and so is that your segue into wanting to talk
That's
about
my
AAU
segue.
basketball? Okay, good. You just want to say thanks again to Coach Baker. Good idea. I think it deserves a lot of attention, and everybody check that out. Now let's talk about AAU basketball so that Coach Baker and everybody in that district knows we're not killing them. We just like bad-mouthing AAU basketball. So just win today, supporting high school coaches and high school basketball since 1978, and so officially. But yeah, this is one of my favorite times of year on Twitter because we're right in the middle of AAU bingo season. And
bingo, I love it.
If you people don't follow AAU bingo on Twitter, I think it's just at AAU bingo, but they get these crazy tweets from around the country. I got one today that said there was an AAU coach this weekend. He received 6 technical fouls in one weekend. He got thrown out of 2 games, and his team got thrown out of the tournament. And he was a 3rd grade coach.
3rd grade. I mean, unbelievable. And the type of stuff that just goes on in these. First of all, I like AAU and the idea of AAU because kids are playing ball. They're playing against. I mean, it's.
I
kids
think
that
a
want to
little
be
bit
playing
of
ball.
AAU is good. I think it's
right,
good.
and that's what. And I saw somebody tweet this too. Probably Friday, because I mean it really ramped up this week because pretty much all high schools are done, and this is about the 2nd weekend of AAU basketball, so it's really, kind of turning on full-fledged. And somebody, I can't remember who had said, if we would just flip our model in the summertime from 1 practice to 6 games to going from 6. That was it. Yeah, 6 practices to 1 game. Why do they got to play 6 games in a weekend? And last week, the St. Louis Eagles were somewhere 7 a.m. in the morning.
I'm going to get on
Sunday.
One of the local teams up here, Team Carroll, Damari Carroll's AAU team. They tweeted out that they had 3 games played in a 6-hour stretch, and the last game that was like 62-52, and they had 3 kids that basically scored. And the whole rest of their team scored 8 points. And again, I just don't understand how kids think that they're improving. A, going and sitting on the bench for an AAU team all weekend, or B, going and playing on an AAU team and shooting 2 shots a game when
right.
And
I think they're less worried about improving, which is what it all started for, was to go play against better competition, get these loaded teams, and now they're worried about getting seen and playing for the right team. And
right. Here's my problem
exposure.
with AAU. Here's my problem with AAU. A good friend of mine had a kid that played for the SEMO Bulls. I'll just say who it was a couple years ago. I know how much it costs to play for the SEMO Bulls because we had a player that went and played for the SEMO Bulls.
Yep.
And I know what they called me and asked me to help this young man fundraise, which would have been more than what it cost for our entire high school basketball team to go play in camps all summer for this one kid to go play for the SEMO Bulls. And I know that this dad of this player, he was paying this money for his son to play, and they were going and playing, and he really wasn't getting to play at all. He was just barely getting to play. And so finally he figured out he was paying all this money, and his kid was sitting on the bench, and that the best 2 or 3 players on the team weren't paying a dime. And so this dad ended up, he's like, that's the last year we played with that group. Now, I'm not trying to kill the CMO Bulls because that's just typical of AAU basketball. That's my problem with the system is basically about, I'm going to say 75% of the kids playing AAU basketball across the country are bankrolling the other 25% of kids who are really, really good that no coach is going to make them play. Because if you're going to make them, like if the Eagles don't let you play for free, then Gateway will let you play for free. And if Gateway won't let you play for free, then MoCan will let you play for free. And if MoCan won't, and it's like I saw a coach this weekend.
There's always another team.
There's somebody else out
there. If you're good enough, they'll take you on. And if it's going to
bump
their stock.
Yeah, they're going to hand you a free pair of shoes and some nice travel gear and all that other stuff. I saw, you look on
and
Twitter.
You just put it on your Twitter page. So
these coaches are showing pictures of boxes of tennis shoes and sneakers, and those kids aren't paying for those shoes.
No.
But again, it's a very small percentage of kids, the ones that are really going to get seen anyway. Everybody else is paying for that kid to be able to play. And then the adults that are making money off of these kids. That's my other problem is the amount of adults. And, hey, I'm not saying that I'm too good to go out there and give lessons or charge money for lessons or anything like that. But I'm just saying to do it in this way and tell kids that this is getting you exposure, this is what's getting you seen. This, like I was talking with a Division I assistant coach the other day, and he and we were laughing like, these kids are going playing in these tournaments at like Poplar Bluff and Farmington. Like there's no college coach in the gym.
Right.
Or you go play at these weekend tournaments. If you go to the big ones, there might be some coaches there. But it's just, to me, if you want to say, hey, let's get a team, let's go play some games, and let's try to get better, that's great. But if you're telling these kids, like I know some of these programs, the funniest one was and again, I'm going to say the SEMO Bulls, and those guys can get mad at me if they want to. But when you say that you got that kid into Yale, let me tell you something.
Right.
That kid got into Yale because he's really freaking smart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like nobody.
He got into Yale on his own.
He got into Yale on his own. I'm sorry.
And that was something I was about to say too. Is like most of these. First of all, you can just look at it. 99% of the kids that play ain't going to go play in Division I basketball.
No.
And of that number, it's even fewer that's going to go play in the NBA. So, one, as a parent, you're either, very, you believe a lot in your kid to back them that much and pay as much money, not just up front to be on the team, but the travel costs.
That's right.
Unless they're getting it all paid for, which,
and
FBI cracking down on that now.
This is coming from somebody who, and if you didn't read the article, there's an article on the website right now called My Conversation with Danny Ainge.
Yeah.
Where I've been to the Adidas Big Time Invitational and seen Dwight Howard and Sean Livingston and, NBA player.
Yep.
I've been to the big event in Kansas City, and I can't remember the guy's name that runs that right off the top. But, I've been to the big time events where the Division I coaches are roped off on the other side of the gym. I've been there. Those events do exist, and you need to go play in some of those. I've been to those. I've had players go play in those. But I think a player would be so much better off spending hours and hours in his own gym, getting up shots, lifting weights, working on his ball handling, doing all these things. Then go out,
Porter Jr. model.
Go out and play some against these other people. That's great. That's fine. That's how you get better. You go play somebody.
But you don't have to go play 60 games in the summer.
No, you're wasting your time. Go play a
because,
weekend.
like we said, playing that many games, 6 games in a weekend or however many games in 3 hours, you're not playing hard.
You're not. This is how you get better.
And that's if, or maybe you are playing hard because you're only playing 10 minutes a game.
Right. You go out. This is how you get better. You go out, you play somebody that's better than you, bigger than you, faster than you, stronger than you, older than you, whatever. He kicks your butt. Okay, I need to go back to the gym. This is why I got beat. I'm going to work on it. Okay, go play somebody better than you again. Try again. Okay, I'm getting closer, or you know what? I'm better than him now. I need to go find somebody else. I got to find somebody else, and I need to go back and work on it. That's how you get better, not by going and playing 60 games. I mean, and we've talked about this before. If that were true, the year before guys go to the NBA, why don't they go play 60 games? No, they hire a trainer. They go put all this time in with the trainer. They hire Drew Hanlon. They go work on their game.
And he gets their game right.
He gets their game right. They don't go play 60 games.
Yeah, and that's what's laughable to me is, like, all these guys, and I texted you earlier, like, all these kids got their trainers now. They're playing for their big AAU team, going to get an exposure. And I'm following along with the Adidas tournament up there in St. Louis. Why are all these games under 60 points? If these kids are working on all these awesome offensive moves, but then they go to college for a year and enter the draft, now they got to hire Drew Hanlon to fix their jump shot.
Right.
At 19, 20 years old. Why don't you have a jump shot already?
Yeah, you should have had one when you're 15, you know. And so, yeah, that's
and also, like you said earlier, about the kid going to Yale, and like the AAU program didn't help him get there. Like they may help, but they were not the reason he got there. And I see that a lot.
You know how hard it is to get into Yale? Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like,
and not just him, but any kid with any college. Oh, most of these kids, and that's what I was saying earlier, they're not going D1 like high major. They're going mid-major, low. You don't have to go like with Penny Hardaway going to Memphis right now. Somebody posted a picture of his AAU team, and people talking about how they're all going to go to Memphis or whatever. Well, some of them were going to all these mid-major schools, and I'm like, do you really have to spend all summer, go play 50 games, and this and that, to go to, you know, a school like a SEMO?
Well,
like, if you're good enough to get into one of those places, you don't got to go play all those games.
And the reality
Work
is,
on your jumper.
Now there are things on the internet like there's this thing called YouTube. There's this other thing called Facebook, and it's like there's so much information out there on players now. You know, like that. The game comes to us. Like I can watch ball is live. I can watch, you know, overtime. I can watch all these different apps that are out there now.
The MSHSAA network on Facebook shows live games.
That's what I mean.
High school basketball games.
All this stuff is out there, and there is a place for AAU, and there are people out there that do a great job. There are skills trainers like Corey Frazier in St. Louis that does a great job. But there are a whole lot of clowns out there ripping kids off, and I just get fired up about it. And so,
right. And like I said, I love that kids are playing ball. We've always said playing ball is better than not.
That's right.
But at the same time, if you're a serious player or parent about your kid wanting to be a good player, spend less money, less time, traveling and playing 20 games on the weekend, and get them outside in the driveway or in a gym, and just start shooting and dribbling every day. It's not complicated. It may be boring, but they're going to get better.
Here's what needs to happen, and I think now, this is a whole other side topic that I didn't plan to talk about tonight, but here's what I think will happen next. Years ago, and for the history of MSHSAA, our State Activity Association, everything's done on paper. You got to turn in all your rosters and your registration and everything for next year on paper. Yeah, we want to register with MSHSAA. Yeah, we want to be a part of the organization. Everything was done in 2-year cycles because everything's done on paper, and it's just hard to accumulate all of that data. Now everything's done online. So everything's done on a 1-year basis. I could totally see schools who don't feel like they have a chance to compete just saying, we're not going to register with MSHSAA. We're going to register as an affiliate only, meaning we can play everybody else if we want to. we're just not going to go to the district tournament. And I could see, say that if there was a coach with a really young team out there that just said, I don't think that we can win a state tournament this year. I'm going to just become an affiliate member and play 59 games, and I'm going to do their skills training, and I'm going to do all this stuff year-round with my players without any restriction. That's where the vacuum that the rules create, and I don't want to say anybody's name because I don't want to cost anybody a living, but there are a lot of coaches around the state that make a lot of money training players, but you can't train your own players in the off season. So in other words, and I would have a conflict of interest taking money from my players, but let's say that I had a group of players, because I get paid to coach them already. That was always my philosophy. I don't want to take money to charge my own players, but let's say that, hypothetically, I'm coaching at Cardinal Ritter in St. Louis, and I wanted 2 of my players to come work out with 10 other players from other schools. And I'm charging them and letting the 2 Cardinal Ritter kids come for free, and I got 12 kids in this group working them out. I could do the other 10, but I could not train my own 2 players.
Right.
So in
without
other words,
costing yourself a contact day.
In certain parts of the school year before you get into summer, it's just
right.
flat out illegal. So in other words, it's legal for these guys who don't work at schools to make a living and create a business and make money off of these kids, but it's not legal for the educated, certified, trained teachers to do it. And I've got a problem with that, and I think that's probably needs to be our next revolution that we start, is there needs to be a rules change that says, you know what, we are not going to restrict our coach's ability to make a living. We're not going to restrict our coach's ability, our teacher's ability to work extra hours with our kids. Like you see some of this stuff on AAU Bingo, a coach is showing up in windsuits and flip-flops with a hat on
bandanas and cell phones, recording the game and coaching at the same time.
These are the people that we're turning our kids over to.
Yeah.
Instead of the people
it's because we're allowing it.
Exactly.
Because coaches can't be with their kids. It's like saying, hey, you suck at English. After school, you cannot talk to your English teacher about how to get better. You can only do it during second hour.
Ever said.
It's up there. I felt top 3 when it hit my head.
Did it feel good as soon as it left your hand? You knew it was going in?
It did. I knew it was in, before it left my hand. It's a heat check shot.
That was really good.
I started walking away already.
That was really good on your part, yeah.
And Bobo sucks, by the way. I'm just watching a little Jordan Barron Classic, and haven't got to rip on that guy in a while. He's so slow, he looks like he's moving backwards.
Really good. So, last part of the show, we're going to tee some people up. You got any technical fouls you want to hand out this week?
Just in general.
And in case you don't know, people, we tee up people in real
life.
We
tee people up.
In real life.
Here's my biggest one. This isn't a real person, but just in general, the thought of this person and what they've been doing needs teed up, and that is Mother Nature.
I was going to tee up Mother Nature. How you tee up Mother Nature
well,
when I was going to?
You didn't have a tornado in your backyard the other day. All right, I had Tuesday, April 3rd. Tornado knocked out my neighbor's sheds and farm equipment, literally took it out. EF1 tornado, 100-foot from my house. I wake up Saturday morning to snow on the ground, snow coming out of the sky. It's just coming down. And then at about 3 o'clock that afternoon, you wouldn't have even known it snowed. And then today, a little bit more snow. So I don't know what she's doing. She's tripping. She needs to get it together. But right now, it's a warning. It's not a warning. It's our first tee. She's got to sit down before she's out of the game.
Yeah, well, let me give you some news about Mother.
Never lost.
Never lost.
Never lost.
And so,
hey, as long as she don't bring back PV.
Yeah, but that would have been mine this week also. So you kind of stole my thunder on that one.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I was going to tee up Mother Nature also, just because the weather has been especially. We expect crazy weather in Missouri, but I don't know that I've seen it snow twice in April in my lifetime.
Well, and we expect it to change day to day. Like, we are not shocked if it's freezing cold today, and 90 degrees tomorrow.
Right.
I'm saying you Saturday, it was snowing, and then it got to about 55.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like at this point, you know, I need probably a few days on a beach in Florida. You know what I mean? I probably need that. Yeah, right now. And so just a couple of school's going to be out soon, and so when school gets out, I may try to arrange that. I feel like I need that after having it snow on me twice in April. And so, like you said, we're not shocked by the change in weather day to day, but this is even a little bit out of bounds for us. So
yep, get together.
Another good show. We got to hammer on some AAU again. That's always fun. It's because it's really the season for that. And so you know, I appreciate. I'm going to give a shout out to a guy on the show, Coach Nick Neely down at South Pemiscot. He has tagged me in a couple of things on Twitter that were just hilarious about.
Well, yesterday I was just thinking about the beauty of Twitter. I go on a little, you know, rant about kids leaving college early, which, I mean, do whatever you think's best for you. I don't really care. I just kind of have my own parameters and guidelines about the way I would think about it. And Nick Neely gets on there, and him and me and you, and even Buck Major gets in there.
Buck got in there.
And we're all just talking about it, and I just think Twitter's so cool because of that. And then, like we just said, Buck Major, who is, I mean, our staff just got elite.
It did. I mean, I feel like when you're recruiting staff writers, I mean, I'm
the John Calipari of this thing right now.
I'm up there as far as being one of the writers. We've got the Bleacher Mom. We've got Kat Strafford. You know, we've got a couple other people like Coach Eric Thompson that are part-time contributors from time to time. But when we nailed Buck Major,
bad.
I mean, that was like signing Zion Williamson as far as our
staff
writers are concerned.
I thought it was like getting LeBron the day he signed with Nike in high school.
Probably
so.
Yeah, and
really
if you guys haven't checked out his first article, I know a lot of people did. Go read that, and I know he's coming back with another one real soon. So if you get a chance, check out the website, www.justwintoday.com. There's a lot of good stuff coming on there. We're trying to keep the content coming, and we enjoy talking basketball, and we've kind of got it partitioned off now where if you like the motivation stuff better, we've got that in a different part of the site, you know, where it's just the daily motivation stuff. That stuff's there also. And so, as always, we appreciate everybody tuning in and all the support that we get for the site. And, Toba, I feel like, you know, you were, I don't want to say it was your A game, but I feel like you were on tonight. So
I was in there.
You were in there.
I feel like had some A+ moments.
You really contributed a lot to the group tonight. So
I do what I can.
Yeah, it ain't JLT. So thanks everybody. We'll do this again next week. JWT.